District Board of Directors. It is June 8th, 2002. It is 6:35 p.m. And I'm going to ask Tracy, could we have a roll call, please?
Okay. Director Boyd?
Here.
Director Decker?
Aye.
Director Harvey?
Aye.
Director Lohman?
Here.
Director Slater Carter?
Present.
Okay, all present and accounted for. Welcome. For my president's statement tonight, I'm just going to keep it really simple. We have a number of honored guests, and by that I mean not only Virginia Chang Crowley, who is here as a special guest elected representative, but we also have members of the community here, and this is designed to be an interactive session. Is here for the community, and not just for the folks who have shown up tonight, but for anyone who watches this recording and anyone you might talk to, because we are very interested in increasing the public participation. This is not intended to be a small team sport. This is intended to be a community effort. And while we do what we can, it's always good to get more people involved. So we are so glad that you're here. And let me now turn it over to Allison. We will go to new business. Oh, I do have to ask, is there any oral comment for anything that is not on the agenda tonight? Seeing none, let's go to new business 1, Elected Community Service Academy 3, roles and responsibilities of elected leaders, candidate filing and campaign requirements, and the election calendar. Allison, please.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen. You'll give me a second. I also have to get this PowerPoint going. So let me go ahead and start it. Hopefully, and sometimes I have to rearrange my screen because hopefully you're seeing are you seeing a full screen of a PowerPoint slide?
Yes, I am. Great. And I'm so delighted by the screen that I'm wondering if I could just get the PDF later and not have to scribble things madly while watching it.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, we'll definitely have it. We can share it, and we can probably post it even on the website.
Oh my gosh, the web.
So,
thank you.
I know, it's amazing. All right, I got to move one more thing so I can see you guys while I'm looking at slides. All right, so good evening. This is our third academy of the Elected Community Service Academy. I am going to get this moving to our next slide here. What I'm starting with tonight, and I'll get to a little bit more content here, is a few of the thoughts we had from our prior presentations. We had several of our current and former board members speak on various topics related to being in an elected role, what they brought to it, how they got into it, what they felt was their greatest contribution, or maybe perhaps the most challenging item. And these are all featured in the prior academies where these members were able to speak during the academy. And they just have some great insights into sort of the breadth of experience and the breadth of individuals who come to elected roles. So I thought it was a great opportunity to start here and just reflect on what we showed previously. Several of these speakers are here tonight, some are not, Dwight's not. But again, our prior presentations have really focused on a collaborative conversation about elected community service, meaning elected roles in the community, in particular here with the district, with some of the other local special districts that really enable change to happen in your community. I only have a couple more here that I want to just highlight. And we'll have more tonight. So again, we're here at session 3. This is the last of our 3 sessions for this academy. If you have any question tonight during the presentation, please feel free to chat me. I will be happy to respond or insert your question or call upon you. That's how we like to keep this as an open conversation while still getting through our content. The academy was developed really to promote a culture of community service and build understanding in the community about elected leadership roles and how to secure elected office. It really is sort of a statement on what we already see in the Montara, Moss Beach community, that commitment to contributions and participation. And we really just wanted to highlight it and bring to light some of the lessons learned and make it accessible to the community who might consider going for an elected role. So this academy started in July of last year. We did board roles and responsibility. We'll do a brief recap throughout tonight. We talked in January of this year about the election process, both candidate filing and financial filings, and running a campaign in a community of this size. And now tonight, we're going to touch on those just as a refresher, but also we're going to speak about the difference between local, special district, other jurisdiction positions, as well as the concept of bringing your unique background to the elected role, because everyone is unique, and it's critical that those different perspectives come to elected bodies. So what we always do, because you're our captive audience, we always start with a bit of an overview of the district. We don't like to lose this opportunity. Montara Water and Sanitary District, of course, was formed in 1958 to manage the local sewage here in the community. In 2003, because of community action, the district was able to purchase, the community purchased the privately owned and poorly managed local water system, Caliam, and brought that into operation and control oversight of the district and the board. So lastly, of course, still under the same mission statement, the district manages garbage collection through a contract with Recology. So all of those services basically hit on critical water and wastewater and environmental protection, maintaining the coastal community concerns. When we look at what Montara deals with every day, and several of you, of course, are involved or see this in out in the public, in the streets. Tracy here is part of that process, of course, along with the board. So there's water quality testing every minute of the day. There is valve turning operations in the streets to ensure water delivery. There's investigating leaks and looking at connections and preparing for capital projects, replacements. There's, of course, revenue, expenses, managing the budget. There's doing the billing that goes to customers. There's, of course, capital improvements and other policies, continuous discussions, ensuring the district has all of its policies and rate schedules in place so the public can access that. And of course, a bit of connections, sometimes some leaks, fixing things in the street. It's a small and mighty team, but really a critical service in the community. So when we get into what are those roles available to the community, what's an elected office representing the Moss Beach, Montara area or the coast side, you've got Senate District, 13th Senate District, Josh Becker, you've got 22nd Assembly District, Kevin Mullen, of course, current San Mateo County District 3 Supervisor Don Horsley, and then the really local positions, local groups, Mid-Coast Community Council, Coastside Fire Protection, the school district, and the board here for Montara. These are all different jurisdictions, and we'll talk a little bit tonight about what's the differences between them? Why one versus the other? What considerations based on experience from the board and thoughts from board and contributors? So we are going to probably focus mostly on some local, but here, of course, is a little perspective on the state, Senate and Assembly districts, and the now newly defined District 3 for the Board of Supervisors. So those are your larger offices. Of course, then we get into local, Coastside Fire Protection District, reaching all the way down the coast. Grenada, just south of Montara Water and Sanitary District. And of course, here, the outline of the district that manages water and sewer here. So with that, I want to turn to Catherine and hope that Catherine can give us her perspective on special districts, local jurisdictions, how it impacts your community, what you thought your experience would be. I also, by the way, have a little quote here at the end. I think it's going to show up that came from Thomas, from a biography, I think, on Thomas Jefferson. So Catherine, would you give us your perspective?
Yeah, I got elected because the county had decided that because we had no water connections because of a water connection moratorium that had been declared by the state on the local company that was serving Montara and Moss Beach, that it would allow wells to go in. And it was not keeping track of where the wells were. Some could have been as close as 10 feet apart. They weren't doing any kind of EIR or study on what our water resources were. They were just allowing wells to go in. I heard of some houses that were getting built that didn't have enough water from one well to serve the house to meet the county minimum standard. So they did put in two so they could meet the minimum. And this was when a house was really expensive. It was like $120,000, $150,000. And I got very concerned about people who had spent all this money to buy a house and they had no backup if their water went out. They thought the county was looking after them, and the county was looking after increasing its tax dollars. I also got involved because I live out on the backside of Montara, Moss Beach. I'm on a well and a septic system, and the county was allowing wells and septic systems to go in without much distance between them. So we were looking at getting our groundwater polluted. And so somebody said, well, why don't you get elected? Maybe they'll listen to you, because as a citizen, they weren't listening much. And so I ran for the water and for the sanitary district. I have met some of the absolutely best people in the whole world. People who choose to live in Montara and Moss Beach make an active choice. And so we all have a passion about the area and the importance of keeping the public health of our community, and also the character of our community. And the only way you can do it, if you really care, is to get out there and be out there out front speaking. The Montara Water, and now Water and Sanitary District, I was on the board when we decided to take over the water district, but we got the power to take over a water district because of a community group who worked with Quentin Kopp. And it took 5 years to get the legislation passed. It gave all the powers of a county water district to our little sanitary district. So when we needed to, Cal-Am was doing such a terrible job. And in talking to people here, they'd go to report a leak in a pipe and they'd end up having to call, I think it was New Jersey, somebody will correct me. And they'd go, Monterey? No, Montana, you must be in Montana. What city? And people were so frustrated, and there would be days where we'd have afternoons with no water. There was inadequate water supplies. So we started talking to people, and people were so unanimous about it that they passed with 83, 86% approval, the bond for us to actually become the water district and take it over. That's one of the things that as a district we can do. It's just like Granada decided it needed parks, so they became a community services district to add park powers to their sanitary district. The county would never do this. It's the people who live here who make the difference. But you only make the difference by getting elected, and not even necessarily getting elected, getting out, going to the meetings, and just making your points. So voluntary compensated roles, I wouldn't know about compensated. We get all of $75 a meeting at MWSD. I went out for lunch the other day with a friend and it was $75. It doesn't cover as much as it used to when I started, but we do it because and yes, the district board does have the opportunity to raise our compensation, I think up to $300 a month or something, which is still not much. It really is an act of love of your community and of wanting to keep your community from being created by people who think we should all have Well, my big thing is sidewalks. They think we should all have sidewalks. And I like the equality of everybody sharing the street. Horses and bicycles and strollers and cars, you all go slow. And you can pull over and wave at each other. It's more of an agreement about we're all in this together, as opposed to getting
skateboards and electric skateboards and go-karts. Montara has weird vehicles which haven't been allowed on California streets for decades.
Well, yeah, it's Montara, and so
just
I could go on and on about it. And so if you see me at the post office, don't ask. But it really is. It's really been a value and a joy to see how the people in Montara really do care about directing Montara and making it a reflection of the people who live here, not a created community that's created by somebody who wants a planned development.
or someone at a distance. I think that's one of the
particularly, yeah, no, that's true. Someone at a distance with an entirely different point of view on what our shared community is. So if I thought about what it would have been and what it has been, I didn't know what I was getting into. What it has been is an absolute pleasure. I have met so many fabulous people and continue to do so. And I would also tell people, if you're going to be in local government, it's also important to stretch out and get involved in county and state affairs so that they know we're here and that we speak loudly. Otherwise, we'd have a big freeway running through us. And the case in point is the most recent thing where some of our citizens came to the district and said, they're taking the top off Montara Mountain. And we said, they can't do that. It's in our district. And indeed, it is in our district. So we went to the San Francisco PUC and they're going to be putting the top back on Montara Mountain and moving their tower somewhere else. We have an amazing group of people in this community, and I'll stop.
Thank you, Catherine. Yeah, I did want to, just highlight there. I think a lot of what you speak to is that concept of why an elected role in your community or at a special district. And it's because you know your community and there are good ideas that are presented that are, maybe it makes sense in San Mateo, in the city of San Mateo, but perhaps not in Montara, Moss Beach. And you guys know your community. That is why being in an elected role, participating in actions that are occurring at the local level really inform better policy, better actions. So we'll go ahead and keep us moving. Yeah.
I will also just quickly jump in and say there are those in Half Moon Bay who would like to take Montara as a portion of Half Moon Bay, but we'd end up paying a lot of money for their mistakes. So it's better just to make our own and pay for our own and keep our independence.
And operate well as a special district, because if you have the opportunity, of course, budget is a big discussion, rates, etc. And all that I think is pretty well balanced. So the board members could definitely speak to that. I'm going to go ahead and keep us moving. See, get my slide going. So as a refresher, what does an elected official do? We've taken a look here in the past academies. Really, the board members, the elected officials are there to ensure member interests are represented. That means attending meetings, discussing, directing, and voting on decisions, policies, and actions, and providing that information back to the community on what actions and policies and decisions have been made. It's really a two-way loop or a full loop. Getting information, hearing what the community wants, taking action, making decisions based on knowledge of the community, etc. So the work of an elected board, we did go through this previously, but setting policy and direction. How does the district or an organization achieve the mission of the agency or the jurisdiction? What policies are considered? What are decided upon? There's a lot here for the district. Setting and oversight of budget, that includes the budget, paying the bills of the district. The district has all types of insurance, employees, et cetera, et cetera. It has consultants because not every staff, you don't keep a permanent staff member for each role. Consultants are very efficient for doing that. Oversight of expenditures. There you go, budgets, chart of accounts. So in addition, setting rates, or if you're in a county or another jurisdiction, you might be setting taxes or fees, utility user taxes. These are the foundation of public financing. It's how you can also assist with consumer behavior, particularly with water rates. If water rates rise, they do tend to have an impact on conservation and promote conservation. We also approve contracts for construction, professional services, HR, engineering support. The legal discussions, of course, and decisions that are made on behalf of and for the district, and representing the district in other areas, committees, going to the county for certain purposes, or attending and representing special district association. Various different roles that the board members take on. And lastly, but I think most important, is supporting the work of the workforce and the work. The board is here to guide policy and ensure budget and expenditures and rates are set. But the workforce is here to actually make the services work and ensure we can get all the business of the district taken care of. And as I said, small and mighty, but there they are. So Clemens, who couldn't join us tonight, he is gleefully traveling in Germany on a well-deserved vacation.
Boo.
Clemens, I know, we thought he might join us, but I think it's 3 o'clock in the morning where he is. So we are understanding. Clemens had some great points in our previous academies to speak about the fact that the role of the general manager is to oversee day-to-day operations and be a hub between the board and staff. But really what he has enjoyed is that vision of democracy at work, seeing firsthand how decisions and discussions are made and ultimately result in very good decisions for the community. And it was just a really great way to highlight sort of what a local board, elected board can do in the community, and that close connection, how it ensures the decisions are made. So with that, I'm going to shift a little to what does it mean to bring your unique background to an elected role? So this was another element brought up during a prior academy. Every background contributes to the skills, knowledge, and curiosity that positively can serve the community. Several of the board members may reflect on this, but we have a breadth of experience, professional and personal experience on this board and with prior different board members. So some of our speakers will speak to that. Former business owners, former medical specialists, current technology workers, all neighbors. They all have brought contributions from their unique experience to discussion and decisions. And I believe with that, I'm going to go to my next speaker. Virginia, would you speak to your unique background? Of course, you're in elected roles currently, seeking further, but really we wanted to speak about you being a woman, your background coming into the Fire Protection District and the Harbor Board. Feel free to go ahead.
Thank you, Allison, and thank y'all for inviting me here. I think that one of the best things that members of the public can do is to be engaged at your local level and really make a difference there. So as you said, Allison, my background was very different when I got elected to the fire board. I'm actually on 2 boards. I was elected to the Menlo Park Fire Protection District Board in 2011, and I was appointed to the Harbor Board in 2015, and then elected to my first full term in 2016, and then re-elected to both boards at the same time in 2020. My professional background has been in finance, investments, business, financial research, that kind of thing. So that was the skill that I brought to the table initially for the fire board. But I also believe that in an elected role, the most important responsibility for an elected representative is to mind the treasury, right, of an agency, to be the fiduciaries of tax dollars. It's the public's money, and you're the steward of the public's money. I think that is the single most important thing that any elected person can do. So that's the skill that I brought. And at the time, I mean, I think this is a little bit relevant in terms of how my background brought me to the fire board. At the time, we did not have a contract, I think at that point, for 5 or 6 years with our firefighters. And that was a very, very long time. And at that time also, we were just getting out of the recession. So I ran in 2011, and we were dealing with pension reform. And so, as you can imagine, especially in this part of the world, this part of the county over the hill, it's a very, very educated electorate. So finances were involved. I had just been on the civil grand jury as the foreperson, and we did a report on financial reform with a focus on pension reform in particular. And, it looked at the different cities and the special districts, primarily the fire district, because the sworn personnel, the firefighters particularly, or specifically, were the ones that were getting the highest pensions and salaries. So that's what I brought to the table. But when I first ran, I was very, very unsure of, my skills in terms of, could I understand the operations? I had done nonprofit work with the Junior League, for example, and we'd done work with education for kids to deal with, fire safety. And the grand jury report that we did was looking at fire alarms being connected to fire houses or fire districts or fire departments, and realized that for schools, and realized that about 50% of the school districts in San Mateo County had not been connected. So like in our fire district, we had a fire in the Bellhaven area, and literally people were watching it burn. And thankfully the school was behind the fire station in Bellhaven. So they actually saw it by total accident. But anyway, so I was very concerned about what I know about the operations, and I was involved with CERT. And my fire chief said at the time, don't worry about that. I'll teach you the operations, right? I mean, and I said, well, I'm not going to be in operations. I feel like I need to learn that a little bit to do the job. So that's exactly what he did once I got elected. And I got elected because of my financial experience, but understanding the operations and working with staff was so helpful. So I guess the perspective I would bring is, just because you don't think you have the quote unquote relevant operational experience in being on a board or an elected board, doesn't mean that you don't have other experiences that you can bring to the table. And for like MWSD and the fire district and also the harbor district, I mean, these are very unique agencies because they are special districts, and we live in the unincorporated areas. So really that's our main place to be in elected office. I mean, we don't have a city, so we can't be on a city council, and that's okay, because by and large, I would say special districts provide an essential service, like the water and sanitary district or the fire district, and to a certain extent, even the harbor district, when we're dealing with harbor patrol and water rescue, and, just making sure that the harbor, the marina is, well, both at Pillar Point Harbor and Oyster Point Marina are safe and clean. And, we have tenants there and, inviting. So you may not have as broad of a job if you're on a special district, but I would argue that in some ways special districts are more important because you're providing that essential service. And I'll just give y'all an example of during the pandemic. And I mean, as you know, I just ran for the Board of Supervisors, and we're still waiting for the final count of all the votes. But during the time in preparation for this, I mean, I think 2 of my opponents were already running for the Board of Supervisors. And, they did not have to run for real re-election in 2020 for their city council races, even though I had to for both races. And one of my opponents was just didn't have an opponent, and the city councils were very different. But during my race, when we were dealing with the pandemic and then the CZU lightning fire, I think in early August, literally that weekend after the filing deadline, all of a sudden, we were making sure that we were able to open up a parking lot, for example, for evacuees. And so we had to approve emergency funding and work with the county to make sure that evacuees can come up in their self-contained RVs, for example, because we were still in the middle of a pandemic. So, we were still doing the work of the public, at least for me, I'm just giving you one example for the Harbor District. And the pandemic brought on different issues and unique issues for the Harbor District in terms of making sure that, people were socially distanced when they visited the harbor, because that's the coast. Our coastline was the safest place to be, which, I think kind of became overburdened in some ways, which is the reason, for example, that this little boy was swept out to sea. And, we were trying to meet those needs in May of 2021 when we the Harbor Board approved installing these life rings. But at the same time, we were dealing with the CZU lightning fire, and from a fire board perspective, as well as this pandemic. So for the fire district, we were dealing with vaccinations and possible outbreaks, especially in East Palo Alto and Bellhaven, which are more vulnerable areas. So those essential services and dealing with the CZU lightning fire, because the fire district is the lead agency for California Task Force 3. So we were working with La Honda Fire Brigade and Coastside Fire to figure out what kind of resources we could provide from one of the FEMA. We were the head of this FEMA task force to see what we could do. So, these services that we take for granted, I think, can be more pronounced when you're in an emergency situation. And in some ways, like I said, those opportunities, if you will, really provide you with the environment to serve, even though you don't realize that. Special districts, I think, are underrated, but they do provide a very local government perspective and control over an essential service, is what Catherine said about being very local. And so don't think that a special district is unimportant, because it is. You will, at least for me, for my fire board, we serve 95,000 people or residents in the fire district, including Atherton, Menlo Park, East Palo Alto, unincorporated West Menlo, where I live, and unincorporated Redwood City. And the Harbor District technically serves all of the county because we collect property taxes from all of the residents, even though our sphere of influence is pretty narrow around Pillar Point Harbor and Mavericks, and then by contract with the city of South San Francisco, Oyster Point Marina. But the point is that we provide an essential service for many, many residents. And that is what I think is so unique and wonderful about special districts.
Thank you. Yeah, I would, just listening to you, just it reminds me how much you learn, how much you continue to learn at any point in time when dealing with, being in an elected role, when you're frankly staff in some of these positions as well, but you never know what the next day will turn into. You don't know where your services will be needed. For me, I have worked with local elected positions for quite a bit of time. And the truth is, it is where your money goes there. The decisions are affecting you on your street. And it better informs you and your neighbors and the people you connect with about how these services are provided. Many people don't, we don't spend this time in education. We don't have the time in K through 12 education to really inform people fully about all of the various services, fire, police, safety, water, wastewater. It's really not, it's not part of the education system, unfortunately, just a driver of time and other demands. And these are the ways that people really learn about them, by basically working, either serving in this role, interacting with a board or a district of this nature. So
So Allison, can I just say one more thing about how I used my financial background? So for special districts, the majority of your revenues will come from property taxes. You don't have sales tax, you don't have TOT, so you have to manage your money very carefully. And one of the ways to do that is to make sure you have a strong and robust reserve policy, for example. But what I brought to the table was, and not just me, I mean, I would say in general, our boards were in alignment with making sure that, we were fiscally healthy. And so for the fire district, knowing that there's at the time when CalPERS had, I would say 7.75% discount rate, which means that, they were expected to make that return, even though we were just getting out of the recession. I mean, it was very unrealistic. I mean, the discount rate has gone down 1% in 20 years, from 8% to 7%, literally from 2000 to 2020. But the point is that, when you manage your money like we did in the fire district, we were able to pay down $44 million so far. We just approved another 4.5 million. So since the time I've been on the board, we will have paid down about $48.5 million of unfunded pension liabilities, and we've paid off all of our debt. And for the Harbor District, we have paid down at the time 2000, I think 17 or 18, 50% of our unfunded pension liabilities and all of our debt, I think in 2017, somewhere in that time frame. But what this does is that it allows you to financially plan for your future. And so for the fire district, during the 10 years I've been on the board, we have built 3 stations. The third one is actually being built right now. And for the harbor board, we were able to, improve, or well, actually fix the West Trail that goes out to Maverick. So if you haven't visited that trail, you should. It's beautiful, and it's this area where there used to be exposed pipes. Those are no longer there, and it seems like the trail is doubled in width. So it's go and visit it. We were also able to provide those life rings, and that's being involved with working with nonprofits such as Sea Valor and developing those partnerships. So I think that with my background and what I brought to the table, at least, was to have the conversation of financial management so that we could understand how we can do things that are beneficial and what the public deserves, in terms of building infrastructure like our stations and fixing the West Trail. And I think financial management and financial planning helps with all of that, so you can understand what your future looks like.
Absolutely. I always think of these districts, and I mean, all of this is budget management. It's some of these concepts may be unfamiliar, but the truth is it's about what's coming in, what can you reliably count on coming in, what do you need to plan for and perhaps set aside savings in order to ensure you have those funds to do the needed work, and to understand the condition of, say, if you use your house as an analogy, what's the condition of your roof? What's the condition of your walls, your foundation? How are you looking to plan to replace or maintain those over time? Virginia, thank you so much. I am going to move us forward.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. It was a great contribution. I know that my next speaker is, if I bring this up here, Rick. I'm going to ask you, Rick, don't go too long. I want to keep us moving. We do still have about half the presentation to go. So go ahead, Rick. Would you just give us a little background into how you came to coming into this elected office and why?
Well, I'm going to take if you'll excuse my face, you'd think after 32 years I would recognize Poison Oak, but I'm a computer implementer. I implement big systems. I had zero interest in politics when I got here. It never dawned on me that I would become a public official. What got me going was trying to read zoning laws, because we were in Miramar, which is heavily zoned. And at the time, the county decided to put a commercial facility in the middle of residential. and at the same time, a residential building in the middle of the business thing. So I said, what's with that? And went down and talked to the Board of Supervisors and said, am I missing something here? They basically said, who the hell are you? That made me angry. So I decided to get involved, and the only opportunity was the Mid-Coast Community Council in its second year. So I joined that, got elected, I guess, and began my political career. As Catherine has said, we started with like the tunnel. That was our job. We blocked the freeway coming down the mountain. And all the other stuff they've done here. I was initially elected to Granada Sanitary District, which became the Community Services District. We got parks. That was the first time any special district in San Mateo County had added a function. It only took 20 years. So my message is, and then since we had control of the Mid-Coast Community Council, the supervisors decided they would not let elected officials join, so they kicked us all out of the Mid-Coast Council. But as Catherine and Virginia have said, this has been the most exciting time of my life. I've really enjoyed all the interactions. You don't need to know anything. If you're a reasonable person, we will help you learn everything that you need to know. Special districts have, since they are privately funded, they need to be funded well. In the case of the Mid-Coast Council or the unincorporated areas, this is the only power you have. You have no city, you have no county reps. You can't do a damn thing unless you're in a special district. And the power you have is pretty significant. So I do it because I love it. I've been doing it for, I got here 32 years ago. Most of that time has been as an elected official. I wouldn't have changed that for the world. As Catherine said, you meet so many amazing people. When the SFPUC took the top off of Montara Mountain, locals said, what the hell are you doing? And we backed them and got it changed. So that was a big thing, I think. That's really my only approach to this whole thing is we will help you learn anything you need. So if you're ever inclined to do this, it's a very rewarding experience and it lets you meet lots of people. So I'd say go for it.
Thank you, Rick. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I constantly hear how many good conversations I think you guys have with various members of the community, because one, you can advocate for them or two, inform them about how things operate, where funds are coming from, where decisions are being made, and you're just another conduit of action and information that really affects the local, residents, businesses, so that you really get to see action and you get to be part of taking that action. So thank you so much. That's great. I am going to move us forward. We're going to talk just a little bit, a reminder again, hey, it's a good time to walk through quickly what the process is to run for office. This was the focus of our last session. This means what are the requirements? And as I said, we've got official filing. So if anyone is considering filing, this portion is the timely information. Just as a reminder, there's candidacy filings, all of these materials you can get from the county. In addition, there is the aspect of running a campaign, forming your platform, knowing what you want to get done when you're in that role, and how to do outreach, potentially fundraising, depending on how your campaign goes. So we did do this before. We're going to always tell folks that there is one information on certainly the district's positions that are available. There are 3 seats that are up this year for Montara Water and Sanitary District. There's information on the website, but as much as anything, the San Mateo County Office of Elections Registrar, that website is the place you want to go and look for candidate and campaign information. There is perhaps now, maybe soon, an actual candidate guide for the November election, which is what we hope you're really looking for. And that guide is really a wealth of knowledge, as well as the staff there at the County Elections Department. What's
Allison,
required?
if I could chip in on this.
Absolutely.
You mentioned the staff at the county elections office. I want to sing their praises. I've spent over the years a lot of time with them, and they have consistently really done a great job of not only attending to all the details, but helping candidates, figure out how to file the paperwork and work through issues on preparing candidate statements. And there's a lot of people who can help, and we're not the only ones who are willing to help people clear some of these hurdles, but the county staff is also very good.
Thank you. Yes, I definitely, we have heard that, and they are the source of answers if you have any questions. They seem to be very helpful, and you'll probably need to visit them at least once, maybe, especially with COVID being different than prior years. So what's required, of course, being a registered voter, 18 years or older. For certain districts, special districts, you have to watch that you're residing within the boundaries of whichever jurisdiction you're looking to run for a seat in. So Scott, thank you, Scott. So these are the dates that are critical. It should be, again, this was dates that I projected from my knowledge of the election calendar. As the candidate filing period should open around July 18th of this year and close by August 12th. It's important that if you're pursuing a position, a candidacy, you're going to run for an office, that you take action during that period. So now's the time. Go get an appointment, download that candidate booklet, because time creeps quickly. We're here in early June, but July will be here before we know it. Again, lots of different forms. I think we went through this. If you have any questions, want to look at that in addition to calling the county or asking any board member here. We did walk through this in our prior academy, declaration of candidacy, various worksheets, etc. Don't wait. This is my theme. Don't wait. It does take some time to get things correct and to get them submitted and make sure you have all the forms. So contacting the registrar is the way to go. Quickly, there's also campaign filings if you're raising money, or even if you're not raising money, you do have to indicate whether you intend to raise money. You're going to be a candidate. There's a Form 700 that as an elected official, you must submit. It just discloses personal information. We did go through this. If you're going to raise $2,000 or more, there's a specific form. If you're not planning to raise that, there is a different form. Again, the FPPC is a statewide organization to basically provide oversight into the financials of elections and elected officers. So just a refresher also, we gave this perspective at a prior academy. If you're going to run a campaign in a community such as Montara Moss Beach for MWSD, you're going to need to file a candidate statement fee. You might get voter data in order to know who you're reaching and to focus your efforts. We did talk about this. When you're getting elected, your audience is really those people who will vote. And voter data does tend to tell you if they have a record of voting. So if you only have so much time, you really want to focus on the folks that are going to be actually voting in the election. We gave some perspectives on what it might cost if you wanted to mail something or just print it and distribute it. So I think I have more on this. Yes, exactly.
It is possible. Since we're trying to encourage people, I do want to say that I've never spent that much in an election campaign. It is possible to do things really on an out-of-pocket budget.
Yeah. I do think also it has been mentioned. Oh, I was just going to say, people have made their own copies at home, and it doesn't require you to make a large number of copies or something of that nature. Catherine, you wanted to add?
I just wanted to say that mostly it's meeting people, the post office, and going door to door and asking questions and asking what people want and attending the meetings. But we have I'll repeat myself, we have a very, very special community here, and people are glad to talk to candidates who want to represent them. And they all have good ideas. So it's easy, and you just leave a little card that says vote for me, that you did on your computer printer or your own cheap black and white copier. Yeah, it's homemade is not a bad thing here. You don't have to look like you're one of those fancy, high paid, high donor base campaigners or candidates. They tend to lose here anyway.
Thank you, Catherine. Yeah, absolutely. I think we've talked about this too, that, you know, it's an opportunity. If you're interested and you know why you want to serve in this role, it's an opportunity to start those conversations with community members who may or may not understand what this district or the jurisdiction that you're undertaking or attempting to win a position in. They may not understand it. And I find it fascinating. I think it is very integral. It's foundation of how we have these communities. And, you know, otherwise every single one of the homes and businesses within Montara, Moss Beach on the coast side would be operating on its own well, its own septic system. You know, these systems are very critical. Fire protection, same thing. You're looking at how do you ensure this community does not suffer from a catastrophic fire? How do you organize together? Because individual properties is not the solution for ensuring the entire community has protection and has adequate coverage for those type of emergencies. And does the pre-work, does the organizational work, the operational work to ensure you've got coverage for certain services. So the last couple of things here, we've got some more perspectives coming, but just want to reiterate what happens after the elections in a particular special district like Montara. Once you're actually confirmed as the successful candidate through the elections office, once we get election returns, Montara as the agency will reach out. We reach out to those newly elected board members. We basically certify the election. These are those process steps. We certify that election at a board meeting, and then they'll invite all those board members to attend and then take an oath of office. And from that point forward, you're seated and taking action. And as a candidate, there's just those little cleanup steps of making sure that you maintain your campaign finance filings. Your thankfully, Tracy, she's a great, assistance for the board members. When you have to file a Form 700, that annual disclosure of where your finances come from. For the district does that. Tracy takes care of that, reminds everyone to ensure that that annual filing is completed. So what now? That's the next slide. So with this, I've got a couple more perspectives, but of course, these academies were intended to promote and seek and encourage and, basically energize folks to seek elected roles. We wanted to see new candidates emerge from the community. We hope it's been a valuable resource, whether you're considering this or another position or simply engaging with this board, with action and activity in your community. I want to take my next moment here and ask Jim if he would give a bit of perspective on again, your background, what you've discovered being in this role, how you got here, and what's maybe surprised you, how you brought your background into it even.
Okay, I'll be more short so we can move this along. I moved here in '85, and I noticed the super high water rates that we were paying in Montara and Moss Beach, and I noticed that the PUC, the California PUC, would give citizens utilities and then CalAm big increases in water rates under the condition that they would put the money back to improve the system. And citizens and then CalAm would never do that, or never do any improvements. So we had the moratorium. And then they'd come back in a couple of months and ask for another rate increase. So I couldn't believe this. I've never been political in my life. I got together with Peter DeDecker and Gary Warhaftig, and we formed the Montara Moss Beach Water Improvement Association, and we fought and spoke up against the PUC rate increases. We worked hard with Senator Quinton Kopp to get the powers of our district to take on water. And then I ran for office, and I was involved in buying out through a bond issue, which 83 or 85% of the people supported, to buy out CalAm, and so that we own our own district, and we've owned it for 22 years now, or 21 years now. And we own our own source of water, and we make our own decisions, and we've kept our independence, and I think that's very important, and I think that's a really crucial thing for the people in this district, and I really enjoyed working, serving as a director. And I agree with Rick that it doesn't take any special skill. It just takes common sense and just reading the material and making intelligent decisions is all you need to do. So it's really a very rewarding thing. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. I do want to just highlight how much has changed in that time frame. To, again, not necessarily have a background in water systems, utilities, legislation, special districts, but in the time frame of being involved from 2000, prior to 2002, of course, to get all these actions. But really in that time frame, we've seen in 20 years going from a publicly, like an entirely privately owned, water system that really wasn't listening to the community and investing in it, with decisions being made from, corporate staff members at a distance, to a locally owned and operated and successfully managed, well-balanced, in great condition system that's managing all of those resources and delivering directly to properties there. So it's a huge achievement, especially for, hey, coming from a medical background, not necessarily on the water side. So lots of action. I think the tunnels are another great example, of course, amongst many other things, of the many things that can get done by community action. My next perspective is Peter. Peter, you also have a history, shorter history on the board, but certainly a history in the community. And I'm going to ask you to unmute because I think you got muted at a point. There you go.
Yes, I'm originally from Holland, so I know all about water and the fight against water. I've lived in quite a number of countries before I came to the United States. And when I came here and the kids grew up here, I got to know a lot of the people, a lot of the parents of the children, and realized what was going on in the community by talking to the parents and by talking to people around the parents. They introduced me to. And in 1991, I joined Jim Harvey and Gary Warhaftig as a board member of the Montara Moss Beach Water Improvement Association, simply because we had been badly treated by San Francisco PUC. And every time we went to a meeting there, we were done away with as we didn't matter. And that really peeved me, and that really got me very angry and determined to do something about the water situation here. But since I was at the time not a US citizen, but a Dutch citizen, I couldn't be on the board, but I was in the wings listening to what was going on. And in 2019, I was asked to fill a position that was temporarily vacant. And then the year shortly thereafter, I was elected as a board member for 2 years. And it has been a real pleasure. Not only do we have a very capable general manager and staff, but we have a fantastic board that is really fun to be with. And all the issues that we discuss are interesting. And there's lots of input from each and every member. And that's what makes this job fun. So I would encourage the potential candidates to come and join the board. It's always been difficult to find people who are interested enough in the water and sewage to come and listen to our meetings. But if you are, and if you find this perhaps a great way to get the community better, to get to know the community better, then this is the way to do it.
Thank you, Peter. I'd also encourage, if you want to know where your money goes, you pay a bill every month. You pay your, some of the sewer costs are on your property tax bill. If you really want to know where your money's going, I mean, this is absolutely where the decisions are made. We talked about it before. A special district has to be very self-contained in terms of revenue and expenses, right? Again, similar to running your own household, you need to be very, you manage based on the income that you can bring in. It determines what you can get done. And if you need to make choices to increase your income, decrease your spending, increase your savings, some of those things, it's very relatable. And I love that it is great fun. I think people do. It is work. There's definitely time and energy put in, but there certainly is enjoyable times in discussion and understanding topics and getting action to occur. I think my last speaker is then Scott. I'm giving you this opportunity to give us the close before we open any questions. Would you just give us a little perspective on the importance of succession planning, how this team is operated, etc.?
Sure. So thank you, Allison. So much I'd like to cover, but let's start with it really takes a team. And one of the really great things Peter pointed out and others have mentioned, we are a team, and the team is not only the board members, but the staff and the consultants, the crew. Together, we tackle a lot of different kinds of problems. You've heard some things about budget planning and the infrastructure maintenance. There's also other things that we do as a team. We tackle big problems and little problems and everything in between. Things like, we've got a lot of pipes and pumps and valves in the ground, and they wear out, and situations change. And so we've got to stay on top of that stuff. But at the same time, we've got to make sure that we're doing it in a cost-effective manner. So we've got the tension of, we'd love to have a luxury water and sewer system, but no one wants to pay for a luxury system. It needs to be good enough. So we wrestle with that tension between what do we spend and what's good enough to be in the ground. But we also have to work with other agencies and elected officials. And let me just give you a quick list. I just took some notes on people we've interacted with as board members. The Coastal Commission, both staff and commissioners, the County Board of Supervisors, again, supervisors and staff, neighboring water agencies, one to the north and one to the south, neighboring sewer agencies, Grenada and Half Moon Bay especially, neighboring cities, Half Moon Bay and Pacifica, The Resource Conservation District, a real surprise to me, but a real pleasure to work with. Another agency, another small but mighty agency that is really doing great things with a charter that looked kind of simple about erosion on farmland and turned it into a really great conservation agency that not only does a good job themselves, but they engage all the other agencies as well and get a big volunteer base. So that's kind of a fun surprise. Community groups, like when we dealt with the issue on the top of the mountain, a bunch of cyclists were the ones who brought it to our attention and joined with us to go try to figure out how to go talk to SFPUC. And we all went up on top of the mountain, hiked up there and had a really neat conversation. I think, let's see, who else do we deal with? State legislators, both in the Senate and the Assembly. Sometimes we get in there and start talking to them about possible bills that are important for special districts. We deal with regulators. I've had sit downs with people from the EPA and the Regional Water Quality Control Board. Never thought I'd see the day I was doing things like that. Caltrans, we've been to their big regional office in Oakland and met with directors and staff and lawyers. And the one agency that we did rub shoulders with for a while, and Peter mentioned it, and I'm so glad that we took on the local control of the water, because we no longer have to deal with the California Public Utilities Commission. That's so you can just scratch that one right off your list. It's good to keep an eye on them as a reminder of what part of why we do so much work to maintain local control. We talked about the different skills, the different life experiences, the different concerns and focus. Like if you look at the 5 members of the board as it's composed right now, we have a lot of common interests, but each one of us has 1 or 2 that is pretty much unique to us. But together as a team, we've managed to figure out how to take some wacky idea that one of us had and turn it into something that the district has actually done something about. So small team, let's just get some big things done. And in the process, we get to care for the community's needs. We get to care for the infrastructure and the team and the viability of the agency, making sure that, at the end of the day, the members of the community know that they can turn on the water or flush the toilet or open the drain and water's going to flow in the right direction. But it's really, as I think it was Rick pointed out, we're really the only elected governing legislative body for our unincorporated community. And that gives us, that's one reason that it's so important that we as electeds take the time to get to know and collaborate with our neighboring electeds and our neighboring agencies, all the way up to the state level and down the street. It is a tremendous honor to be able to do this, and it's been educational. I'll say that. So now, just a few words of advice for anyone thinking about this. This is something over the years that I've been trying to do, and I think the successful people. This is a pattern that I see everyone engage in. Meet people, meet members of the community. Get to know what they're thinking about these issues that are within the scope of the agency. Show up to the meetings. We've had people run before who didn't show up to meetings, and our community knows whether or not people are just doing it to get something on the resume or if they're actually interested in what the community needs. Here's a hard one. Several of us mentioned that we got into this because somebody activated us and got us energized. But a really key thing that all the successful board members have done is come in with open ears and listen really carefully. There's a lot to take in for members of the community, from the board, from the staff, from our consultants, from our attorney, from our water engineer, our sewer engineer. It's a lot to learn. So listening is a key. And doing some reading, reading the board packets. There's some good stuff in there, but there's more. And sometimes that means going and reading up on issues happening at the legislature, or maybe taking a look at an occasional state law or something to help inform some understanding of what we're struggling with. And then ask questions, ask any individual board member or any member of staff, someone in the audience that you're sitting with. Those questions lead good places. And then bug any of us and say, hey, can we get together for coffee? I want to talk to you about this or that. And then one last thing, and everybody on the board has done this, I kind of got into it this way. Start out with some volunteering. Even if you're not elected, sometimes the best way to take it for a test run is see what you can do to volunteer. We have some people who come to committee meetings. Some people just come to every meeting. But I got started with saying, hey, I was a technology nerd. Would you like a website? And so I made a website back in 1997, back when you still had to kind of type it all in. But I'm not the only one. Everyone here has done some level of volunteering. Peter and Jim volunteered to the extent they started a whole organization and rallied with Quentin Kopp. By the way, Quentin was the one who energized me back when we were working on the tunnel, and he gave me some stern words that got my back up. But I'm happy to report that we've had great opportunities to interact with stern people like Quentin over the years, and I really value getting to know guys like Quentin. It's a real honor. Okay, so I hope with what we've talked about that we've only increased the interest of coming and participating. If you have questions, we really want to hear them. And I think you've heard a number of us say, ask us anything, we're here to help. Allison?
Absolutely. And this is my last pitch. If you want to ask a question, you can chat it to me, but of course we can raise hands, and that's the end of the formal presentation. Bill, I can see your hand up. You should unmute yourself and please go ahead.
Yes. The thing which makes this so exciting to me is something which I haven't heard anybody mention, but when Clemens took me on a little tour around and I got to climb up some canyons and look at like our Fiji water splashing down the mountain to have chlorine injected to it later, which just seems like a shame. Nobody's yet mentioned the utter coolness of essentially having a live-in science project in your front yard. I mean, for me, it's my front yard. For some people, I suppose it's your backyard. But the idea that we are drinking the water which actually landed as rain in front of us and is going through pipes we can practically see, it feels like there ought to be a version of the Bay model. You know how the Bay model is, they have like a model of the entire San Francisco Bay and people can go look at it? It just seems that there ought to be high school students building a model railway water system in a back room somewhere so that we can actually look at what we've got here. Nobody else has that. And it just seems cool. That's all.
Absolutely. I love that.
So Bill, it's not just the rain, it's also the fog. And one of the cool science fair projects that we have is we have fog monitoring stations that see how much water we collect.
That's the one on to the right, to the left of the trail, a few hundred yards past the tanks.
That's one of them. That's right.
Okay, that's the one I saw anyway.
Yeah, there's been some really good science done, not just directly for the district's interests, but also to help out with NOAA and to help out with the current. It's a project that tracks the currents in the bay and along the coast. And that's actually been used in life-saving efforts to try to figure out where boats adrift might have wound up so they can guide the Coast Guard to the right place.
That sounds exceptionally cool just as a sort of a citizen science, get involved in your community reality kind of thing. But in addition, for a very small outfit to be doing world-class science means that you are now waving a very high-profile banner, which is a kind of an insulation against acquisitive political organizations, which I keep hearing lurking on the horizon. So there are, I think, institutional reasons for making sure that, you know, local people can play with the stuff and get it published afar as much as possible.
We have on our website a link to Balance Hydrologics. And so you can see on an immediate graph the last 3 years of rain to date.
Cool.
One overlaid over each other. And if you kick around in the balance pages, you can also see the old rainfall logs from the airport that go back pretty close to 100 years.
That is cool.
And there have been some years where we've had almost 60 inches of rain. And then there have been some where we've had almost 17.
That kind of long-term data is really useful for giving people a sense of the natural variability of
Exactly.
practically anything, in this case, rainfall.
Yeah, there's been some really good research. Clemens and Mark Weishner from Balance have done some publication together of some research papers, and we've done really interesting things like doing analysis of the water to see how old it is. So when we look at a well, and when we're first exploring a well, seeing, are we looking at ancient water or recent water? It makes a difference.
And the
One
other
last thought.
thing, the other last one is we have the sewer plant. If you want a tour of the sewer plant, let me know. I'll be happy to arrange it. Dan, anybody else who is on this show?
I actually even signed up right before COVID. My son was so excited to go with me, and then you canceled it. And I was like, you can keep my money. Do it later. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm interested in stuff like that, and I'm exponentially more interested the more people there are in the group. So I'm sure somebody has my email. If it looks like there's a group of a couple, sign me up and we'll find a way to make it happen. Does that work?
Well,
Exponentially. That's
Yeah.
Well, when you're dealing with small numbers, that's not a very big increase.
I know.
Right. I will so two thoughts I had before I'll close my section, and we'll turn it back to the regular business of the board meeting, which is not, I think, long, but I did want to say two things. One, thank you, Dan. Yes, we had a tour plan. We literally had a tour plan for March 14th, I think it was, of 2020.
I know. I still have the email for it. Yes.
Thank you. Yes, and so we did have, at least I think we were planning on 36 people. We were doing them in rotations with a small van. So I hope that we can get that to happen again. We did do a virtual tour that is on the website. If you haven't found it, I could find you a link for that. But the being in person is certainly the best, because seeing where things are gives you a real sense for how that water and the wastewater is being dealt with in your community. The last thought I had before I close and turn over to Scott, just a perspective that, as I mentioned, a lot has happened just in the 20 years, but the other part of water and wastewater is there's never a plan for this service to go away. You plan and spend money, you take in money, you do investment now, but you are planning in perpetuity to continue to offer these services to ensure you have the water to supply the homes and businesses with expected growth or no growth, recycling water, et cetera, climate change. That is the business of any utility, and particularly a public special district of this nature, fire protection, similar. There is a length of time that these agencies and these individuals and roles are not only speaking to today, they're not speaking to next year alone or 5 years, they are speaking to potentially 50, 100 years. It's a legacy as well to ensure these systems are available to the next generations that come along.
So I have a couple questions.
Yes.
I didn't raise my
Absolutely.
hand. I was so impersonal. I spend my whole day on Zoom, so I get tired of that. So you said there are 3 board positions open, is that right? And so how does that work? I'm pretty interested, or I wouldn't have been here the whole time. How exactly does that work? Like, there a whole bunch of us run, or how many people normally run? Like, how does that all work?
So I'll jump on that one. It's 3 positions open. So it's an at-large at present. So as many people run, the top 3 vote getters are the ones who are then elected. The seats are currently filled, but these are seats that the public gets to choose. So we all try to catch ourselves if we say things like "my seat," because that's the public seat that we occupy, and so we've seen that go a number of ways. Sometimes it's everybody running individually. Sometimes people pair up and say, "Hey, we're running together." It's how that's presented to the public. But for example, last time I ran, Catherine and I ran together.
So that just
By
means
the
you
way,
campaign together, or
that
you,
means we campaign together.
okay, okay,
we-
okay. I was like,
we do
I-
And it
joint
keeps
spending,
costs
and
down.
it's, Hmm?
costs down
That's right.
and
It-
doubles the effort.
It also conveys collegiality, which I should say, look, the 5 board members, we're all very different people. We've been accused of being cut from the same cloth, but attend one board meeting, you'll know that that's not the case. We each bring something different to it. So for us to be able to say, look, we really are collegial with each other, that's a statement about how great the organization is, and part of why it's fun to be part of it. So how it goes in the future, we are moving to district elections, and that's going to make it a lot more interesting, because some of us are in what would probably be the same district. And when we go to district elections, and I think that's in 2024, there will be one representative from each of 5 districts. So a couple of us probably can't be on the board at that point unless
and
we
districts meaning, if I understand you, districts meaning like the parts of Montara.
Yeah, you take the map and
Okay.
you take the map and you chop it up, and it's done with demographers to try to make sure that we get really good groupings, so nobody's left out on any kind of demographic.
And that's
certain protected
something,
demographics.
that's
Why is this
something we
happening?
could use your involvement on. That's something that is coming up. So the other half of the team is the community, and your involvement counts. Unlike the higher levels of government, we pay close attention to what the folks who care to say something are saying.
Yeah, I heard your question, Bill. Why are we going to district elections? Is that the question?
How stupid.
Well, I got to say, you remember when I said that we have some big problems and some little problems? Well, some little problems are big problems. And one of those is that state legislature passed a law that makes it very easy to force an agency's hand into going to district elections. We were presented with a lawyer's demand. Sabrina Brennan got a lawyer to present us with a demand. And really, there aren't a lot of options. Now, we as a board, we spent probably an extraordinary amount of time exploring the options, but really at the end of the day, district elections are the best way for us to protect the interests of the district. Exposing ourselves to unwarranted litigation is not in the interest of the district.
All right.
So one of the things that we're very focused on is, look, we really need to reach out to the community into those areas where we don't typically have people from those areas participating in these meetings. It's time, and we're drumming up that interest now.
Okay, so
that's going to be good for it's going to be good for the agency that we have people from more geographic parts of the community.
I'm trying to figure out how much is because this is a good thing to do, and how much is this is a bad thing to do, which we're being forced into by legal power plays. My role has always been as the lone data scientist. I got to kind of premiere that role in Silicon Valley. And so I am capable of asking more annoying questions faster than pretty much anybody I've ever met.
Oh, no, you Paul Perkovic would have stood you well.
Well, let me ask him some questions and let's see what happens. But in this case, just on a numbers thing, if you have a very large district, if you have, 100,000 people or something, it makes sense that each group of 20,000 should have its own representative, because a group of 20,000.
It's like you were in our meetings. I mean, these are
okay. But my point is, these are numerical laws. These are laws of mathematics, which have to do with the amount of correlations and what it means to get a representative. If there were a special district of 5 people, would that mean each one is his own voting area? These rules, rules like this, I mean, yes, I assume they were put in place by stupid politicians or corrupt politicians, either one.
Well, Bill,
but job one is to figure out what reality is and then worry about what the lawyers say reality is.
Bill.
Oh, no.
Okay, let me take the floor back. The law as written did not spend a lot of energy concentrating on small districts. And we are by no means the only small district who's had its hand forced But the fact of the matter is the law is a rather blunt instrument as
Mhm.
written. It needs to be improved. We've
Yes.
had discussions about getting it improved. Um, it's very difficult because the key of what it's trying to do is take underrepresented communities, especially communities of color, and help them get a
Mhm.
voice, the voice that they deserve in government. And so to stand against the law in any way looks like taking a stand against the underrepresented communities. Bill, hang on.
Yes.
This is a part of the board process. When someone has the floor, they have the floor.
Okay.
Um, so
Hello.
these are issues we're definitely on a very similar page. You and I especially are on the same page about this law is not very well conceived,
Mhm.
and it is the law of California.
Mhm.
So as a board, we had to contend with the reality of it.
Mhm.
And this is where we wound up. Now, if you want to go with me to Sacramento and say, can you craft some law for small districts? We can go together and work on that.
Oh yeah,
Whether or not
I will be annoying. So I want to be annoying to the biggest people
Scott?
possible.
Whether that gets
Virginia
on
is
the
an
board
end
in
up, Scott.
2024, I wouldn't bank on that. So in the meantime, in the interest of caring for the community, we're going to try to drum up support from all across the community so we can have good representation on the board. I see, Virginia, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, so I can shed a little bit of light on this since I was the foreperson of the grand jury in 2008, 2009 that wrote a report on election reform for the Board of Supervisors. But essentially, Scott is correct when it comes to looking at the California Voting Rights Act and how communities of color at some point felt disenfranchised from the election process and also representation. And so that's how, and this is kind of an offshoot of the Federal Voting Rights Act as well. And so what happened in San Mateo County, Bill, is that the Board of Supervisors was in danger of continuing this, what I call incestuous practice of having someone resign so that he or she could run for a higher office. And then that vacancy needed to be filled, and it would be filled by an appointment. And because it was being filled by an appointment, people were picking their own
Mhm.
friends, right? And instead of going through the election process, and at the time, out of the 58 counties, San Mateo County was literally the only county in San Mateo County that was, I mean, in California, that was not using district elections. We were electing our Board of Supervisors at large, which was significantly more expensive. And so that was always this excuse. So what the grand jury did was just kind of highlight the problems with this, right? And so I think it was 2012 when now maybe it was somewhere around 11 or 12, I think around 2012 when it was put on the ballot for the residents of San Mateo County to vote whether they should go to district elections, because 2 other times before this, before 2012, it had failed. So the residents did vote. I mean, we're a charter county, so it was easy to put on the ballot. But at the same time, the Board of Supervisors, read the grand jury report and made the change to say that when there is a vacancy, they can no longer appoint. So they have to do a special election, because at one point, almost 60%, 3 out of the 5 supervisors were appointed for the first time. And once you get on there, you're there for 12 years. And really, when you look at 3 out of 5, it's about 60%. So that's the majority of your board. And so, unfortunately, what we have is not as clear direction from the law right now. And so it's become a business model for law firms to sue special districts or cities. So you're seeing a trend right now in California that cities and special any place that's got an elected body will now have to, if they're given a demand letter to correct this, to go through the process of looking at district elections. That does not mean that you have to go with the districts, but you would have to look at all of the legal consequences as well. And sometimes it's a most of the time, not sometimes, it's a cost benefit analysis. But that gives you hopefully some background as to why this is happening as a trend right now, and not just here, but throughout California.
Yeah, a very nice summary, Virginia. That's quite right. Bill, you had your hand up?
I grew up hearing about Board of Supervisors meetings during my entire childhood because my mom was covering them for the Country Almanac. I also got to hear about Menlo Park Fire Protection District because we lived in Menlo Park. So a lot of this sounds familiar. Obviously, it's a hugely useful thing at the county level because what the county has like 500,000 people or something like that, right? It's just the numbers don't make sense for small groups. So I'm the last white person in my family. So, and my wife works on a lot of D&I stuff. So I'm very familiar with the legitimate needs. It's just, it is nerve-wracking that there should be extortionate law firms, but I just needed to hear that this is a result of extortionate law firms. It is not that Montara needs this particular solution. It's that we are having to deal with...
I'm sorry, go ahead.
It sounds like,
well, it's an unintended
speaking,
consequence, Bill.
Yes, it's an unintended consequence of a law which was not written with essentially numerical stability in mind. So if they had some data scientists who were able to craft the way the law is written, it would be clear why it's really good for counties of 500,000 and it's kind of stupid for communities of a couple thousand. But it does turn out. We took a very hard look at this. It does turn out that there are small communities where this kind of thing does matter, where a very small clique of people were able to maintain control. But your points are, like I said, Bill, right there with you. You talk about the extortionate law firm. The extortionate law firm was activated by a member of our own community. Wow.
And a really interesting thing about the law is that it does not require that you demonstrate that there is this kind of disparity. It's, like I said, it's a very blunt instrument. I don't think it's very well written. It's been very effective to get like San Mateo County to do the right thing. So I'm not going to complain about it too much, but still, yeah, it's tough. But when we talk about the things that an elected person working on a board like this has to contend with, guess what? We don't get to pick these battles. Sometimes they come to us, and then we gotta do our dead level best to figure out. First we may I was not a happy camper about what we were confronted with because I'm sitting here thinking about the representation issues and balance, and I looked through the all the voter demographics, and I'm sure you would do very similar things. But at the end of the day, we had to put our heads together and do the thing that we thought had the best outcome for the community. And I don't think any of us thinks that it's truly the best outcome for the community, but it's what we could do under the law. So we do find ourselves constrained. And Virginia?
Scott, also at some point, you have to figure out what your mission is. And your mission isn't to deal with fighting this kind of law at this point, right? Sometimes as part of the cost benefit.
Yeah, fighting it could have cost us $30,000 every time somebody sent a demand letter. So, and it was without end. There's no limitation on how many of those could have come. So
that's right.
Okay. So I think
we were literally the only agency in California that had 2 demand letters because of the same community member.
So someday I feel like just screaming at somebody over this kind of thing. I don't have much patience for bureaucratic stupidity. I come from the land of pure science and truth. And so anytime I see something like this, I have to yell.
You're not the only one. And, Catherine, I'm sure Catherine would be happy to have you come along on a trip to Sacramento to sit down and bend the ear of someone who might want to draft and carry a piece of legislation. But I can tell you already, it's going to be a challenge to come at it in a way that won't set off alarm bells about undoing the very purpose of the California Voting Rights Act.
My specialty is not what other people think. My specialty is what's true. I'm very good at it.
Scott, I just want to draw your attention. So it's 8:10.
Well, let's wrap this up.
I know that there were some emails that were sent. So email addresses in the chat that Catherine asked to coordinate tours.
Thank you.
Yes, and I would just say once again, the prior academies are on the website. They can be viewed. They're also so right on the website under board, Elected Community Service Academy. Clemens is not here tonight, but I do want to say Clemens info@mswd.montara.net. It's on the website. Emailing Clemens.
MWSD, not MSW.
Yeah, boy, if I did that different, that's I know.
MWSD.
I did want to just put a plug in that Clemens, he'll be on vacation for the next couple of weeks, but he is a wealth of information and would be happy to connect anyone with information, answers to questions, potentially connect you with board members if you have an interest in asking more of the candidate campaign questions that you maybe have not had a chance tonight. So Scott, with that, I think this topic
So
is
let
done,
me,
and back to you.
I will turn my eyes back to the agenda. We have no reports tonight. We're not going to talk about future agendas. We have no closed session. I want to thank everyone for coming. Thank you for your participation. Thank you for your vigorous thoughts and reactions to things. That's part of what makes this lively and interesting. So thanks again for coming, and we look forward to seeing you all again. Virginia is our special guest. Thank you so much for being here. And Allison, our collective thanks. Thank you so much for helping put this together and getting us all together to help make the community that much more involved. Thank you.
Last word, Dan and Bill, please give your email to Tracy and she will give you all the agendas. It's here. So if you want to be put on our agendas, so you get notice of our meetings and what's happening, they come out a few days before the meeting, and it's the second and fourth Thursdays. And you can just put it on your handy dandy little electronic calendar. There's always something exciting. Well, for us.
All right. Well, with that, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you again. And thank you, Michelle and PCT.
Thank you, everybody.
For being here and getting the word out.
Wonderful.
Good night,
Take care.
everyone.
I appreciate it.
Thank you all. Have a great evening.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, Allison. That was wonderful. I think you did a real job. Good job. I'm sorry I talked so much. I just do that.
Recording stopped.
No worries at all.